Hello everybody, my name is Moragh Mackay. I'm the New Energy Projects Manager with the Latrobe Valley Authority, and I'm working in the Smart Specialisation program that's operating across Gippsland. I'd like to welcome you to the webinar 3 of the Gippsland Smart Future series on townships implementing community energy. I'd just like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that I live and work upon, the Bunurong and the Bunurong peoples, and I'd like to invite each of you to do the same. Thank you. We have some wonderful speakers on the topics today, the Township Energy Solutions topic today. But I'd just like to start with a bit of housekeeping. We have 3 presenters who will speak for approximately 10 minutes each, and then we have 5 minutes available for questions of each of the speakers immediately after their presentations. And in order to be able to ask a question of one of the speakers, please use the Q&A function, which you'll find at the bottom of your screen in most cases, though I have just discovered that it does move around a little. We also, if you need tech support or advice, then please use the chat function. We have Esther and Darren alongside us to be able to respond to any tech support or advice if you would like to, if you need that support. And we won't be using the raise hands button. So we'll get into the presentations now. So we have 3 wonderful presenters today speaking on 3 different approaches to whole town energy projects. One thing that they have in common is that they have or are in the process of undertaking a pre-feasibility study to provide data to inform their projects. Otherwise, their approaches have been developed and delivered to reflect the needs of their communities. So they have a lot to share with each of us, and we have a lot to learn from their experiences. And I thank each of them for agreeing to be part of today's presentations. We'll be starting with Niels Jensen, who is the project manager with the Mirboo North Community Energy Hub. And he will be speaking on the projects that they've been undertaking in Mirboo North, involving installations on several public buildings. And those projects sit within an overarching plan for which they had a feasibility study done, and they've learnt a lot in the process of developing these projects. Now, Niels, if you would like to come online now and start with your presentation and take us through what you have learnt in your project.
I'm not able to come online. I've been turned off apparently. But anyway, that is okay. We shall get there.
You're able to share your screen so that others...
Right. I think
yes.
you should be able to see me now.
Yes, that's right. Yep.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Yeah, my name is Niels Jensen, and I am the part of the control group for Mirboo North Community Energy Hub. And I'm also the project manager on the project that I'll be talking about today. What I'll do is I will spend a few seconds talking about the energy hub and where we came from and where we're going. And then I'll spend the majority of the time talking about our first project. So the energy hub was established in 2012 and funded by our community foundation. The purpose of it was, as you can see there, to enhance the community quality of living and create a more sustainable way of living for future generations, and to investigate how we can assist the community in achieving those goals. One of the major things that we have done, and let me just go back and say, I joined the energy fund in late 2017, at about the time that the first feasibility study was released. The feasibility study, which was founded by the New Energy Jobs Fund, is a very comprehensive document, which has been looking at the total energy use and breakdown across the community, and been investigating the various options for the introduction of renewable energy into our area. So it contains a detailed plan for options to what we can do in the community, and in the 2 lines down the bottom is actually taken out of the feasibility study, and says exactly what the purpose of the document was. It is 54 pages. It is extremely detailed, and it is worth reading. If some of you would like a copy of it, you can request it. But what I wanted to talk about today was our first project, which is it's called the Shire Hall project, and it is based around what used to be the Mirboo North Shire Hall, which is now a building housing a number of interesting offices, among which are the Mirboo North Times, which is our local paper. Anyway, this is the areas that I want to go through today, and I can see that our pictures are sort of shading out what it's all about. But what we did was the purpose, again, as I said, was to introduce PV on 4 buildings. They are located next to each other in a little square in Mirboo North, and they are around the Shire Hall, the St. Andrew's Anglican Church, the Childcare Centre, and the Mirboo North Library. And it is in a total of 80 odd kilowatts. So what we did was that we wanted to promote the concept of renewable energy in the community. We wanted to demonstrate the capabilities of the Energy Hub to develop and manage the projects, and we wanted to implement solutions that support and share the community. From the outset, we got a lot of assistance from the council, South Gippsland Council, which was very useful in a couple of things which I will get to on the roadblocks. But basically what we did was we put in a submission to DELP in September 2018, only of course to be slowed down by the election. It didn't really do anything to us in the end. We thought we wouldn't get anywhere because of the election, but it just in the end delayed the decision by 2 months. And we got a grant for $88,000 from DELP. Our local community fund donated another 7,000 odd, and the church donated $3,000. We had a total project cost of $98,000, exclusive of GST. And the little asterisk next to the GST is very important, and I'm coming back to that later down in the presentation. So what we did was, once we obviously had quotes prior to, but after we got the funds, we contracted Gippsland Solar to do the 4 installations. And after a lot of initial work, we commenced the project in June, completed it in August 2019. So coming up to a year ago, well, as a matter of fact, that the project started. We got approval from AusNet to export 15 kilowatts for each building. And I don't know if you can actually see what the size of the installations are, because I can see their little pictures on it. But if I just recap for you, the Shire Hall is 16.3 kilowatts. The church is 12.2 kilowatts. The childcare center is 24.5 kilowatts, and the library is 29.6 kilowatts. So it is quite some sizable installations. And it has been working very well, which I'll come back to very soon. So what is interesting is probably not what we have done, but what issues did we see on the way. And I mentioned already the state election. And that was just a slowdown. It wasn't really a roadblock. We had some issues with AusNet, not because they did anything wrong, but because of some holdups in the installation, the permit ran out and had to be renegotiated. So that cost us a couple of months with regards to the church and the Shire Hall, where they actually wanted to reduce our feed-in, but it was all fixed in the end. Naturally, also the weather played a little part in it, because during June, July, August, we probably lost about 3 to 4 weeks in total where Gippsland Solar couldn't work. Another issue we had was that there was heritage protection on the Shire Hall. The hall is a beautiful old building, for those of you who don't know it. And so there was a hold up in what were we going to do? Did we need to get around the heritage protection? In the end, council helped us a lot with that, and all we did was really we moved the panels around, so there are no panels on the front of the building, which is the protected area. That was actually, it cost us a couple of kilowatts, but it actually also makes it a not much nicer installation. It looks absolutely beautiful. The other issue we had with the Shire Hall was the ownership, because I've just, first of all, I have to say that all the organizations that actually inhabit the building are for community benefit. So we've got the Mirboo North Times, we've got the Destination Gippsland, we've got various organizations that all benefit the community. But the ownership of the hall is interesting because the building is on Crown land, but the building itself is owned by DELP, but it is managed by South Gippsland Council. So as you can see, it is that could and did produce a few stumbling blocks, but again, the council was very helpful and it was all resolved. The last thing I wanted to say about roadblocks and issues is GST registration. If you are a community group, if you are doing projects like these, it is very, very important that you consider GST registration. Now, by law, you must be registered for GST if your turnover is over 150,000. And we did not meet that requirement, so it was voluntary. The problem is that when DELP gives you a grant or gives you money, if you're not registered for GST, they don't pay the GST. It's a very contentious issue because, as you can appreciate, we still have to pay the GST, but we didn't get it back from DELP. So we had a shortfall of almost $9,000 in our project. And there was nothing DELP could do. We did negotiate with them and they couldn't be changed. After a lot of hard work, we realized that we could actually backdate GST registration. So we did that and we have subsequently got the money back. So we're not out of pocket, but it did cause us a lot of issues, just losing $9,000 up front. So basically, just in summing up the outcome so far, and what we have done is that we have now collected data from spring and to autumn. I think the last bill we have actually got in front of us is very current. We can't really argue about the accuracy at the moment because due to COVID-19, the buildings have been empty for a lot of the time. The library only opened up this week. The Shire Hall has been virtually empty for all this period of time. Of course, the church and the play group our daycare center has been in use. But it means that there has been less consumption that they would probably have expected. Now, at this point in time, all buildings are in credit. And I think that is a great outcome. We expected that some buildings would get a 70 to 80% reduction in the power bills, and some would get a little bit less, being the Shire Hall. But at the moment, they are all getting more than 100%. So we'll have to monitor it over winter and see what happens then. So the return on investment is way above expectation, which is very, very good. Now, so where are we going from here? Well, the first thing we're going to do is update our feasibility study. So it is current and takes into consideration current costing and technologies. We are in the process of applying for new funding on the new rounds. We are looking at which mature new projects we can use. And with the project for the Shire Hall, we are talking about possibly adding batteries. And once upon a time, when we are able to use microgrids, we would like to turn that installation into a microgrid and add another couple of buildings in the area. So that was basically all I wanted to tell you. I hope you found it interesting, and I will now turn off my presentation and be ready for anything else.
Mm-hmm. Thanks very much, Niels. That's really awesome. We've got time for a couple of questions. We've got two sitting in the Q&A spot at the moment. The first question, I think maybe Niels, you may have sort of answered after the question was asked, but the question is along the lines of, because of the export issues and limitations from AusNet, did that impact on all the users and their cost of electricity?
No, in the end it didn't, because we knew from the outset that they would only give us 15 kilowatts per building. So that was in the calculations. When they came back and said that they couldn't honor the original agreement for the church and the hall, they cut it down to about 10 kilowatts, but that was renegotiated and we are back to 15. So there's been no financial impact.
Thank you very much. And the next question along is, could this project be applied to a residential environment?
Absolutely, I don't see any issues with that. But I mean, to ask for funding for it, you would ask for a number of buildings to be involved.
Yes.
I'd love to do that. I mean, love to do a dozen or two. It doesn't, not a problem at all.
Thank you. I've got one for you. I'm just wondering, what was the greatest area of learning or the biggest surprise for you in the project that might help sort of give other people the heads up in terms of these sorts of projects?
My biggest issue was that I'm in sales, so I'm by nature not very patient. And
so patience is a key.
It does take a lot of patience to do some of these things, especially when you negotiate right, left and center with a lot of different organizations. But I think that's it. Thorough, patient, and document everything, and it's all good. Okay.
We do have another one question, probably time for one more, and then we might pick up some of the others that are coming through at the very end of the session, when we'll have all of the panelists back and able to ask questions together. But this question, it's probably not a short question, but if you can give a short answer, because we've only got a minute or so before we need to go to the next speaker, could you explain how this particular microgrid works?
Well, it is not a microgrid because, as you know, we cannot do it at the moment. It is actually illegal, but we have 4 buildings that are in a little square. So they are generally within, 10 meters of each other. So it would be a perfect opportunity to turn them into a microgrid in the future. And they're surrounded by 2 other buildings, which is our local aged care facility and also a kindergarten, which already have solar on the buildings. But we would love to include them in the future when and if microgrids become possible.
Okay, thanks very much. So they're standalone systems at the moment, but could easily operate as a microgrid should the regulations change or some sort of innovative new technology arise. Yep. Who knows? Thanks so much, Niels. And for everybody's benefit, Niels will be back at the end of the last presentation, along with the other speakers, to be able to answer 1 or 2 more questions. So now we're going to go to Scott Dwyer. Scott Dwyer works at the Institute for Sustainable Futures at the University of Technology, Sydney. And he and his colleagues are research partners with the Heyfield Community and Resource Centre and the community members of the Heyfield Township. They are in the middle of, towards the end of their pre-feasibility study. Unfortunately, they got the pre-feasibility study underway just as COVID, just when COVID was kicking in. which has put a few spanners in the works, but nothing like an amazing challenge like that to learn from and show your adaptive qualities. So Scott's going to take us through where this project is at in its pre-feasibility and some of the engagement methods that they've been able to employ in adapting their plan. Thanks very much, Scott.
Thanks, Moragh, and pleasure to be here, and thank you for the invite to the network. So, yeah, I'm here to talk about our pre-feasibility study that we were research partners for the Heyfield Community Resource Centre with funding provided by the Latrobe Valley Authority. So, as Moragh said, we'll talk a bit about the pre-feasibility approach. A little quick note about us. So we're a research institute that works with government, industries, community on sustainability challenges, which we tackle through transdisciplinary research. And we're organised around different research areas, and I work within the Energy Futures team. And but as you see, we cross into a number of different research areas which are relevant for these types of projects. The other types of projects, which give some context as well to what we'll be talking about, is you see a selection here. So we've worked on Networks Renewed, which was a virtual power plant demonstration project that demonstrated how residential solar and storage could be used to support the electricity network in regional towns. So we worked with Yakandandar and a community in New South Wales called Columbati to demonstrate this. We've also worked on prototyping business models for solar gardens, and we've also been working with local governments in regional areas around electric vehicle strategies and co-designing business models for them as well. And the microgrid topic has been something we've been exploring with Heyfield for maybe 2.5 years, and I'll give you a bit more context around that. So what I'll speak about today is I'll give you an overview of the pre-feasibility projects, take you through the journey as well, and talk a bit about some of the early survey results which have been an output from the pre-feasibility study, and then I'll talk about next steps as well. So the pre-feasibility, our aim of the pre-feasibility is to help provide better understanding of what is the community's appetite, profile, and broader context for a microgrid in Heyfield. So there was 3 main components to this, which was there was a research phase, survey phase, and a number of events, and all these would feed into a community engagement plan. The research phase involved desktop research and interviews, collation of socioeconomic data, and trying to get a feel for what are the different opportunities and barriers for renewable energy in Heyfield. As part of the surveys, we mailed out a survey via the newsletter, which the Heyfield Community Resource Centre publishes every week. We undertook a street survey. Luckily enough, this was before the COVID situation escalated, so we were able to get out and speak to people. An online survey via the community's Facebook page, and then the events as well. So we had planned a town hall meeting, and obviously we weren't able to run that in the end. We had a workshop plan, so we've had to go online with that. So yeah, as Moragh said, it was a bit of we had to think and adapt quickly, and we tried a few different things, and really tried to find what the community was comfortable with and what our partners were comfortable with as well. And the community engagement plan, which we've drafted, we've been getting feedback from different stakeholders, and we'll actually present this to the community on Thursday. We've got a webinar 6 till 7 between those who answered the survey and said they'd be interested in being involved more. And we had a really good response to that as well. I'll explain a bit more about that after. So the journey, and Neil's mentioned the journey as well, and the patience and persistence. So it's quite interesting where the concept came from. So my town Microgrid, the concept for a wider project, which was to be a microgrid feasibility that was data-led, and the idea being the process which we would develop would not just help Heyfield develop a microgrid, but it would make it easier and faster and cheaper for other communities to understand the feasibility and the value proposition for a microgrid for their community. So this came out a Renewable Energy Agency A-Lab event, which brings together various stakeholders and startups and community government stakeholders. This idea was developed. ISF, we compiled an expression of interest for ARENA. And at this point, we were speaking to communities in 3 different states, and we were trying to do a cross-state comparison. So I can imagine the complexities with getting the network businesses on board and then getting a community on board, and then one would drop out and we'd have to get another one. We had, but actually through this process, we had an initial contact with the Heyfield Community Resource Centre. And then shortly after, as we were still developing our ARENA expression of interest, we became aware of the DELPS microgrid grant application. I think this was maybe a year and a half ago. And it wasn't quite the right grant for us. We were looking for something that wasn't just about deploying a microgrid, but it was about making a process and making the decisions and more easier for communities who wanted to do something, a community energy project. So we were unsuccessful with that. We then, a federal microgrid grant application was published end of last year. So and probably more suited towards our project concept. So we developed a proposal for this, and this again was for feasibility. And at this time, we weren't going to find out until we were successful until Q2 of this year. So that the idea that we could actually get started on a pre-feasibility where we're really gauging what is the community's appetite, what's their vision, what communication methods are used, how should we engage. So the pre-feasibility was a way of making sure that if we were successful with the federal grant, which is we're still waiting to find out on, we'll be able to hit the ground running. And this is where we're at today. These are some of the communication materials that we put together, and again, from the engagement, from the research, this is an important source of information. Is people dropping into the resource centre, speaking to the people they are, looking at the notice board. We also published this in the weekly newsletter. This is the cover sheet of the community street survey, which we did, and we got around 70 odd people to fill out the survey. So I'm just going to talk to you about some of the extracts, some of the survey results. And again, these are just initial survey results, but we've used this to develop the draft community engagement plan. So one of the questions, how important is it to you using renewable energy that's produced in Heyfield? Again, the sample was 77. And yeah, we had up about 90% either saying it was either extremely important or very important. Another question we asked was, would you like Heyfield to be 100% powered by renewable energy, 75%, 50 or other? And again, there was a strong desire to be 100% powered by renewables. And would you change your electricity provider to make it to a local community-owned retailer? Again, we noted an appetite for this. And would you like to participate in planning a microgrid in Heyfield? And again, around half people said they would like to be part of that. Anyway, there's more questions than that, but these were quite key ones. And in particular, being part of planning, this gives us an opportunity to engage further with these individuals and to build a community reference group where who can take the idea and continue to drive it forward. In terms of next steps, so we're finalizing the survey results. That's probably just been completed. We are got the stakeholder workshop event, which is now online. So we're holding that on Thursday, and finalising the community engagement plan thereafter. So, as I said, it's been that nice linear line about the history of the project. It's not been like that at all. It's been very up and down, and we appreciate the patience of the Heyfield Community Resource Centre, because they've got a real appetite just to move forward and get stuff done, and it's a long track record of sustainability initiatives there. But I think we've got a really great team, and we've got a really great concept, and pending the results of the federal grant programme, I think we could really make a big impact on how communities engage and understand the proposition for microgrids for their towns and communities.
Thanks so much, Scott. That's wonderful. And for anybody online listening to this presentation, they may not know that Heyfield as a town is either the top or the second top town in terms of percentage of solar panels on households, and increasingly on the roofs of businesses around the town as well. So it's most definitely a wonderful town to partner with the University of Technology Sydney on this project, and both parties as well as the residents of Heyfield are learning a lot from each other. So the Latrobe Valley Authority and the Smart Specialisation Program's been very keen to support the pre-feasibility work, because it's got such a strong emphasis on engagement, community engagement, and working with people to help, co-design the system rather than it just being about the technology. It's all about the social and the opportunity to participate and really guide the outcomes. Okay, so where are we at with some questions? For Scott, have you considered how community energy retailer would work? Would you be able to respond to that, Scott?
Yeah, no, that's a brilliant question. So at this stage we're at, we've got some initial appetite for a community energy retailer, but exactly what that looks like, I think that's something which we'd like to have at the end of the microgrid feasibility. And how does that work? What's are the cases from other places in the world? What works, what doesn't, and what's right for the community of Heyfield as well. So I think the main feasibility project within that scope, where we've got business model co-design, we'd like to involve retailers in that process, but understanding exactly what are the needs and wants of the community. I think that will be key in really understanding how the retailer would work and what function they would have.
Thank you. And we have two emerging community-owned energy retailers in Victoria, one with Indigo Power and one with Cooperative Power Australia, and there's potentially a couple more in the wings, almost ready to launch. So there will be some choices in this area where we haven't had choices before, which is wonderful. Any further questions? Not coming up on the screen at the moment.
There's one on the chat, Moragh, from Ian around changes in ARENA funding and the impact of smart grids on how it'll impact smart grids for small towns. I mean, that's true. So ARENA funding, the last I checked, they have a pipeline of projects, and all the funding is committed. Not all the projects in their pipeline will initiate, but that EOI process, which I mentioned before, they're not admitting any more projects to that. So there's still uncertainty around what the future of ARENA is, and the impact they've had, I think, on renewable energy in Australia has been the amount they've invested and the types of companies and organisations they've supported as well. It will be a big loss if it's not continued. But from our point of view, there's other funding sources out there. There's other opportunities at federal and state, and I think our approach will be, if we're not successful with the grant funding, we'll look to some of these other support mechanisms, and it might be a case of looking for approaching the project in tackling parts of the project at a time, discrete parts. We know what we want to achieve. The community's got the motivation and desire, and we'll look to try and get to that end point where we've got a good understanding of what the community wants and how to make it easier for other communities to follow in Heyfield's footsteps as well.
Awesome, and yeah, just like to emphasise that some of the outputs from this project will be the sharing of any of the tools and methods that are being developed as open source, so that other communities can most definitely pick up and learn from and adapt some of the approaches being applied in Heyfield. Thank you so much, Scott, and we'll see you back again at the end. I'd like to now invite Bhavani Rooks, who's the coordinator at the moment with Totally Renewable Phillip Island. Now, Totally Renewable Phillip Island is a very big project. It's tackling renewable energy, but it's also tackling a whole lot of other elements. So this is quite the big community or whole of island project, and Bhavani is going to take us through some of the complexities and the intricacies of such a large project. Thanks, Bhavani.
Thanks, Moragh. It is a big project indeed. So Totally Renewable Phillip Island is what we're called. Oh, sorry, I'm just trying to do my slideshow and it's not moving through. Hang on, I'll just go back to a different share, sorry. Okay, now we'll move through. So we're known as Trippy. We're a movement or a forum rather than a group as such, because we come together as a collection of groups and individuals with the common goal of being passionate to change the future for the positive. This is what we currently look like. We've got member groups, which are very varied, but still with our same common goal as carbon neutral 2030. And we have working groups. This all came about back in June 2018, when a strategy and governance workshop was put together by the Energy Innovation Co-op. We had 65 people attend from some of the groups that are there now, but some of these groups have come on later as well. And this workshop was over 2 days. At the workshop, we were looking at how did we want to move forward, looking at the island, seeing it was an easy way to delineate into the future, not just necessarily with energy, but across the board. This workshop, it came out that we wanted to aim for carbon neutral 2030, and this is where these 6 working groups came about. This was where my journey began with Trippy. In July that year, so just after, we organised a public meeting, and at the public meeting we had 200 people from the community come together, and we had a live Facebook stream of maybe over 150 people, and that was just to ask the community, did they want to do this, and were they willing to go forward? And we had overwhelming yes from the community of that. As Trippy working together for carbon neutral, we looked at working through the collective community efforts, some existing and some we wanted to put together, but to use clean and efficient energy, reduce our emissions and pollutions, sequester carbon in both soil and plants. So we wanted to go beyond just looking at energy, but at the whole emissions profile. It was in August 2019 that the Bass Coast Council came in and supported by declaring a climate emergency as well, and they're also aiming for our whole council region to become carbon neutral 2030. So that's quite exciting to have the backing of the council. How did we plan to do this? With 6 subgroups, the working groups, which I'll go through one at a time, but we were looking at education from the whole community and through school programs. We were looking at how to avoid, reduce and emissions and pollutants, looking at switching to clean and renewable energies, the sequestering of carbon in both soil and plants, and encouraging a local insetting scheme for the emissions offset. And I'll talk about what that is when I come to carbon farming. But along with the 6 working groups, we created a core group which had at least one member of each of the working groups on it. And we would meet quite regularly, the core group, to create support for each other and what was going on, to inspire and to advise. We followed up in September 2019. So we had a year of just working, trying to create some change. In September 2019, we went back to the community with an open day to state what we'd found, what we discovered, and what we'd managed to achieve. I'll move through the 6 groups. Carbon accounting, which was a huge effort to actually look at our whole island and what our total emissions were, because we needed a baseline to know where we'd improved. So this was a huge effort, and that was the outcome of the carbon accounting. On our open day in September, a lot of this information was presented to the community to show and inspire what had happened. Carbon farming, and this was the group that I was mainly involved on. We struggled along through that first year, and for me, I was on there with a local farmer who is very into carbon farming. And it was a real eye-opener for me at what wasn't happening in the carbon farming area. And it was really challenging to know what to do. But our big break came at the open day when Bob and Ann Davies, and Bob was a farmer on this group with me, donated 100 tonne of soil carbon for trading. So we ended our whole open day with an insetting auction. The first tonne, and it was auctioned by a local auctioneer, and we revved up the people, and it was a great time. And our first tonne of CO2 equivalent was traded for $800, which shocked all of us. Trading then proceeded through, I designed a group of packages. So for example, the frequent flyer or the big lifestyle, we had the opportunity to buy, to inset your flights. So we had a variety of packages, and then finally we sold just 1 tonne of CO2 equivalent if people just wanted to inset that, and that was at $25. Our goal was $25 per tonne. We averaged on that first September day that we actually averaged at $33 per tonne, which was very exciting. We raised $6,000, and since continued to trade what was left over, we've raised $9,000. The money raised enabled 5 new landholders to take their initial soil carbon test and then begin a 2-year journey supported by Phillip Island Land Care Group to change their methodologies over to increase their soil carbon. The biggest goal, the 2 goals come out of this. One is to have soil carbon available to trade for an insetting scheme, but the other one was to also enable the farmers to see that there was a big on-farm asset to improving carbon within your soil. So you're increasing water holding capacity, soil nutrients, and microbiology diversity, which then improves your yield. And different methods through the 5 farms. We've got different methods going on each of the 5 farms, and about every quarter I go back to the individuals and we talk about what's gone on, whether it's changed due to whatever reasons. And in December 21 we'll have our second soil test for those farms. So I've mentioned the word inset as opposed to offset, which is what you all know. And offset's where you pay somebody an amount of money to hopefully do something to improve some carbon drawdown, but you don't know where it is, and it's often offshore from Australia. Insetting, the idea is that it's inset within your own landscape, so you can actually see the evidence within your local landscape. And below on this slide, you'll see there was a sticker that we created to go along with the insetting, so we could have a car sticker for that. Insetting, it's a voluntary agreement. We do the accredited testings, but it's still a voluntary agreement. The carbon is held within the local soil, and because it's local, people generally stay more connected through this being the locality. You can do it through a direct chain of supply, but we chose to do it through a geographical location. People got a certificate sent to them, and they also got a GPS location so that anytime were not feeling good, they could look at their farm that they've inset on and feel better about life. So that was carbon farming. Food and waste. Boomerang Bags is part of this group, and plastic free, and they've worked hugely over the years. They've diverted 5,600 kilograms of landfill from the waste and created 6,000 bags they're up to, along with 11,000 animal pouches after the bushfires. Pickle is our community, Phillip Island Community Adult Learning Centre. It's a hub of resources there, and they're a big supporter of us as well, allowing education and community gatherings to happen. They're growing. There are a lot of food at the moment for food support to local members. This group's also investigating the idea to get a larger biodigester for the businesses. We've got the green wastes bin here, but it doesn't work for the commercial green waste. So we're looking at that, and we're hoping that this year something might happen in this area. What we've found with the groups too along the way is that one group will have a big project happening, and all the other groups will come on board to support it, and then it will move through and another group will take over. Transport. This is a challenging area, I feel. They've worked hard, but it's such a costly area. So, increasing the knowledge around alternate energy and the choice of alternate transport, educating regarding active transport as well as electric and public transport. At our open day in September, we were able to get electric cars, bikes and a bus for viewing, and their bikes were able to be tried. So that was quite exciting. But also one of the things that's happening with transport is it's becoming more vocal as an advocate to more active pathways within the island. So we've only got one major bike path linking Cowes across to San Remo, and it actually goes all the way to Wonthaggi. But to get some links between Cowes and the Nobbies, which are the main tourist attraction, and possibly Cowes towards Real, is some of our goals here. Education. This was big this year, and unfortunately COVID just hit into the end of it. We started, the open day was part of the education back to the community, where we got people excited about talking about climate. We started over the summer a community engagement van. So this happened to be the land care planting van that goes out in winter, was doing nothing through summer. So we started taking it to some of the markets, some of the activities that were happening around the island, and we'd set up a table, we'd have the flags, and we'd chat to people about anything to do with climate, and we just sit there and have fun chatting. Some people would chat for 2 minutes, some people would sit down with us on the chairs and chat for an hour. We produced A5 cards to give out. So on one side it had all the partners and our goal, and on the back side it had achievements and what was coming up. And we would do small runs of these and continually update them so that it didn't get tired and we could see what was moving through. We have a great graphic artist on board, so she enabled us to always have new graphics coming through, and that was fantastic, by Jenny Job. And she was the inspirer for the school program. So New Haven Primary School came on board and agreed to be our pilot school, and basically what we wanted to do was a mini trippy through that. So we went to the school, and over five or six, we just missed the last two at times because of COVID coming in, but we went to them and we got the students to actually decide what they thought pollution was within the school, what they thought they could do, and then we'd separate them in, and they got their own working groups, and then we worked with each of the groups. So this happens to be the garden group that I worked with, and we were replanting and infilling. A booklet was made up, which we held off printing because, again, we missed our last one, but it's ready for printing. And this is one of the pages from the booklet that showed the whole story. And we wanted that booklet so that we could also hand out and move through other schools on Phillip Island, but then also go broader as well through the whole Bass Coast and inspire other schools further afield. Energy. So right now we are having a pre-feasibility study done by David Coote, who is going to be joining us for the questions. And it was a joint venture between ourselves, Bass Coast Council, Western Port Water and Phillip Island Nature Park, them being also the big energy users and wanting to have a coordinated rollout of renewable energy across the island so that it moved out smoothly. We wanted to enable community to come on board as well and not miss out if they wanted to be a part of it. So we are just about to hear back with our pre-feasibility study and be able to start making decisions on what our first few projects will be. But we've gone through and collected information from individuals as well as businesses on their energy use. We're looking at what styles of energy, and this is what David's area is, what style of energy may be best used in certain areas, or a combination, which combination. And that's about to happen actually as of next week. We might be all getting together to talk about that. In the process, in the process of through this, after our September open day, the council came on board and supported us by giving us $50,000 a year for 3 years to enable us to continue our work to have this rollout of a totally renewable Phillip Island carbon neutral 2030. So we've been very fortunate with the backings of all our groups, and one of the great things between all the groups is that because our common goal of working towards a positive future overrode any other goal, we seem to work, not always, but seem to work quite seamlessly together on this. And that was, it's been a wonderful experience to be a part of. And I can reiterate what both Niles and Scott said in patience, persistence, but also support of, whether it be support of groups or support of friends, just to talk through what you're doing has been vital.
Okay, thanks so much, Bhavani. It is a massive story, and excuse me, we've taken up a fair bit of time. We've got a little bit left for some questions. We might just go straight into questions with Bhavani, Niels, and Scott. We don't have any at the moment on the Q&A. Oh, hang on, yes, we do. Okay, this one looks like it's for Bhavani. Are the carbon insets accredited under any national or external accreditation program?
No.
And if not, what mechanisms are in place to ensure the insetting remains over time?
No, it's not. We're following registered guidelines, and it is a voluntary trade between the two parties. And there's, I guess, we've got Phillip Island Landcare Group backing us, and I guess to some extent there's an agreement between us, but based on voluntary.
You do have a contract, but it's a voluntary contract. Yeah. So there are new institutional arrangements being developed as part of the project.
Ever learning.
Yeah. Okay, one question. Wow, fantastic. Did it take a while to get the Bass Coast councillors on board?
You might be able to answer that one better than I, Moragh.
There are Bass Coast councillors involved right from the very beginning of the Totally Renewable Phillip Island project, which I was involved in very early on a couple of years ago. There is just a very proactive council at the moment in Bass Coast, very, very supportive of climate change action and renewable energy.
The current councillors are hugely supportive, but also the council support team, Benita Russell, who is our climate change officer, is always there for us and very supportive.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Question here, how important is it to have local government backing? And we might even ask each of the presenters, so Bhavani, Scott and Niels, if you could each talk to respond, you know, have you had much to do with local government in your projects, and how has that helped, or you know, how is the relationship going?
If you take me first, I think it helped a lot smoothing things out and shortening some areas. So I would definitely always involve them as far as possible.
Thanks, Niels. Scott?
Yes, we involved local government in the stakeholder engagement initially, and then we interviewed them as well as in the surveys. And yeah, like they're going to have a big role if we get the as part of the main feasibility as well. So yeah, like we'd be looking to work with them a lot more through the main feasibility project as well. But yeah, definitely important to have them side and supportive.
Bhavani, have you got anything to add?
No, that they are important, and it's great that they are with you.
I think the biggest lesson from the Bass Coast Council and the Phillip Island project is that there were two council motions passed that endorsed both the Totally Renewable Phillip Island pilot and the climate emergency, and both of those motions have set the institutional sort of policy setting that then empowers and enables the staff to collaborate with the project, as well as has provided some financial resourcing as well. So I think that there's a really strong pathway for other participants to potentially pick up on and try and replicate in their local government areas.
And because Bass Coast did declare the climate emergency and then took on the same goal as Trippy, they also established a climate reference group, which Trippy is a part of that as well. So it feeds back and forth into one another.
Niels, I think you were saying something, but you might have been on mute still.
No. I was talking to somebody else. It's quite all right. Thank you.
Putting your lunch order in?
Yep.
Very good. Okay, are there any last questions before we bring this session to a close? I think we're pretty well 2 minutes past 1, so we're at the allotted time. It doesn't look like there's any further questions, so I might just go back to sharing my screen, which has got some information about the next session and where we're headed to next in the Smart Future series. Niels, can you just confirm for me that you can see my screen?
I can indeed.
Excellent, thank you. So I really wanted to thank Nils, Scott and Bhavani once again for the presentations. I understand their contact details will be available for anybody who wishes to follow up on any points that they've raised and any questions you might still have to be answered. We also will have a transcript, a recording and a transcript available of today's discussions and answers made available, and that will be circulated to all of the participants tomorrow, I understand, within about 24 hours. Esther's the one that's onto that and cracks the whip pretty hard. So you can expect to see that coming out pretty soon. So I just wanted to also acknowledge the, the supporting organisations and the sponsors of the Smart Future series, and that that includes the Latrobe Valley Authority, the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning, Wellington Shire, Gippsland Climate Change Network, Latrobe Valley Community Power Hub, and I possibly have missed some, but I apologise if I have. The next seminar, next webinar series coming up is part 4, Financing Community Energy Solutions, and you'll have me as your host once again. We will be hearing from Dan Cardell from Geelong Sustainability, excuse me, Birchall, which is a crowd investment platform, Oxami, which is a energy brokering platform, and the Energy Innovation Co-op to speak about the, so each of those are speaking about different types of capital raising to be able to fund and support community energy projects. And they're all at different scales, so there is potentially something there for everybody. Energy Co-op is at a smallish scale. Geelong Sustainability installed 100 and something kilowatt, 150 thereabouts kilowatt system on an aged care facility and raised the funds themselves through a crowd investment platform. Birchall are accustomed to quite large fundraising efforts, and then Oxami have an energy sharing, a brokering platform which can help underpin business propositions. I just wanted to point out with this webinar too, webinar number 4, that you will be invited to, when you register for this, if you're interested in coming along, you will be invited to a follow-up breakout room discussion with one of the speakers. So we'll hear from each of the 4 speakers first, and then participants will be asked to nominate which breakout room that they want to go to have more in-depth conversations, so that you can actually ask much more detailed questions about the approaches that each of these speakers will be presenting on, and then how that might relate to a project you have in mind. So when you register, that's what you'll be asked, is to nominate one of the 4 speakers. But during the presentation on the 17th, if you change your mind, that will be possible, and there'll be instructions given at the beginning of the presentation. Okay, I'd like to wrap up today's session. Once again, thank Esther Lloyd and Darren McCubbin, who are really the organisers behind the organising team, and really look forward to seeing you all again in 2 weeks' time. Okay, thank you very much.